Good afternoon. Today I have the privilege and real honor to introduce our next speaker. We have His Excellency Dr. Neeraj A. Sharma, Honorary Consul General of Republic of Palau in India, who is a Doctorate of Honors from Business Management and Medicina Alternative affiliated with the Open International University for Complementary Medicines. He is conferred honorary doctorate for outstanding achievements in the field of business and industry. Some of his areas of expertise are business development, operations, strategic planning, diplomatic and international relations, effective man management, supply chain management, critical decision making, training. And some of the industries that he's been part of are automobile, hospitality, higher education, recruitments, import and exports, migration, startups, electronics, and retail. He also has been part of professional work and business experiences with some of the corporates, and these are the highlights. He was a director with Knowledge Resource Enabled Trade Organization, managing partner at Karnataka Electronics, director Sunshine Coach Builders Private Limited. His Highness was also a part of Harsha Wheel Movers Private Limited. He was part of ex-consultant Imperial Auto Industries Limited, New Delhi, managing partner at National A Corporate Advisors, and he is founder and trustee in Chandra Prabha Foundation and Trust. Some of his achievements are: he turned loss-making unit into one among the top profit organization in its industry, gained respect and confidence from senior management of the organization, licensed and interacted with government departments, top bureaucrats, ministers with positive results, graduated from being a performer to being an outstanding performer by managing most of the skill areas of a full-fledged organization. Some of the awards and recognitions that he has received are: he was awarded the Rashtriya Yoga Ratna Award by Economic Development Forum for his social obligation, as he is actively supporting the following non-governmental organizations and charitable organizations like Home for the Aged, that is the Little Sisters of the Poor in Bangalore, Missionaries of Charities, Mother Teresa's home in Bangalore, are some to mention. So he is also managed the management meets and seminars, and he has traveled extensively across the globe to countries like United Kingdom, Germany, Switzerland, France, Netherlands, Dubai, Kuwait, etc. And he's also traveled the length and breadth of our beloved country by means of common man through train, bus, bike, car, etc. to understand the various cultures and languages of our nation. So here we bring to you the today's speaker, Dr. Neeraj A. Sharma. So over to you.
Thank you so much for the introduction. I hope I am audible before we begin.
Yes,
right.
Yeah, you are.
Thank you. First of all, I have to extend my gratitude to Professor Suresh Nagpal, the chairman of Krupanidhi Group of Institutions, Madam Mrs. Geeta Nagpal, who's been a guiding force for the institution I've been seeing over the years, and the very dynamic Dr. Samuel Paul, who has been very actively the spine of the institution in creating it from just a small institution to what I would say today is a university in making. So you have to accept my thoughts in that, because Krupanidhi today has got such vast experience in terms of students you have churned out, students who have gone ahead and exceeded in their industry. So many congratulations to you on that. And of course, Dr. Riju and yourself for organizing this webinar with two keywords, business and education. You actually covered the entire globe with that. Uh, these are two very interesting words or topics for me as well, because I come from a business background as well, and I am also looking to get into education, like many people are trying in the aftermath of the pandemic, because the word online is now the first word before anything else. But I will divide my thoughts into two. One is into business. I will share my thoughts and experience about business, the global scenario, what an entrepreneur should now be looking at. And the other one would be how the education system needs to re-energize itself, re-envision. I think that's one point which most offline institutions are looking at, including yours. I just heard Dr. Riju asking a question that what's in for the offline institutions? How are we going to proceed? What are we going to do? So it's a very good initiative to take the views of most of people, and you've got a very good lineup of speakers today. You've got people from the entertainment industry. You've got World Cup winners for us. You've got actresses. You've got people from the law and order of the country. So I think over the period of the next 3-4 hours, you will gain a lot of insights, which will also be helpful for the institutions and to move forward. So let me begin with, before I start, I also want this to be a interactive session, because that's how we have been trained to come out with good positive results. That when you interact, let it not be a monologue. When you interact, that is when good positive vibes come out, good results come out. So let me start with a fact that I represent a small island in the Pacific Ocean called the Republic of Palau. And Republic of Palau till now is holding itself as one of the very few nations in the country who are COVID free. I repeat, COVID free. There are hardly any countries left in the world which have not been hit by this pandemic. There are a lot of reasons to that. We will discuss that during our session. But it's a small island with a small population, mainly focused on tourism as its main economy. Being an island, it is evident that there must be a lot of fishing, but Palau does not allow fishing. There is a ban. It wants to conserve the marine wildlife, marine life of the world. And Palau was the first country in the world to bring a ban on using sunscreens in the ocean in its waters. It's now countries after that who are actually, trying to follow that precedent. So coming back, as I said, first part, I will look at business. No doubt, business has been hit in COVID, because we now even most governments have started calling COVID as an act of God. So this act of God has challenged the resources and the intellect of a human. There are a lot of theories which are flowing around which say that COVID was lab made, COVID was man made. I will not get into that. There are a lot of investigations going on. The results and the outcomes will say whether it was man made or whether it was wildlife made or whether it was it came on its own from the outer space. But yes, businesses are facing a challenge. Today, globally, we need to look at two aspects. Business from the aspect of an entrepreneur and business from the aspect of the government. We are seeing that everywhere there is a huge dependency on the governments or the particular governments of a nation that bail us out. Now, why is that? Why is that we are dependent on the government? When we work in the environment and we make profits, we say we made the profit. But when there is a loss, we say we've lost because of the government. So though it is human to blame somebody, but this particular pandemic has exposed that we cannot blame anybody. We have to blame ourselves. Why are we being told that wear masks? Why are we being told that keep distance? Because we don't do that. Why was there a lockdown? Lockdown was not only in a country like India, but lockdown even today, Palau has a lockdown which we imposed right from probably starting of March. We have not allowed even one aircraft come inside. We have not allowed people to come inside. Why? And people have adhered to that. It's been close to 4 months now. Almost 5 months are completing now that we are not allowing commercial aircrafts to land. It's not that they are circling around and we are not allowing them. We are not allowing because we want to protect our people, and our people are understanding that the government wants to protect them. Why can't we understand that in all other countries? If we had understood that the impact of this pandemic on the economy would have been way lesser, our lockdown would have not lasted. I'm talking, let's say specifically for India, our lockdown would have not lasted 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks. There are states even today, they are having lockdowns. So we need to retrospect ourselves that where have we gone wrong? As businessmen, we have started panicking. Why are we panicking? We have got so much of experience behind us. When we say, we use the terminology start from the scratch. So when you start from the scratch, you take time to build. You take 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. Here you are not starting from the scratch. You are working, there is an abrupt stop temporarily. You are now back. So if you've taken 1 year, 2 years to establish yourself, you can take 3 months now to come back into the rhythm that you were pre-lockdown. So it is, I feel that we need to go hand in hand. The private entrepreneurship should not panic. We need to make use of reserve funds that we have been having. Now, when I say we, please understand that I am talking of an entirely global scenario. I am not trying to pinpoint a particular country or a particular state or a particular region. The situation what is in India is also in the US. The situation what is in US is also in UK. In fact, a lot of countries in Europe have been going through recession even before the pandemic struck. During the pandemic, we were on flights and just when it had started worldwide, we were on flights and we were talking and having seminars at how to bail out countries from recession. Countries like Greece, UK, Slovenia, or maybe many other countries have gone through bad economic situations, Bosnia. So where are the entrepreneurs? We have built such a great pool globally for entrepreneurships. Now, these are the entrepreneurs who go ahead and become entrepreneurs and become leaders. Now, leadership is another aspect which I will talk in the end. It is a global pandemic. I feel it requires a global collective combat. All countries have to come together. We need to make sure that people understand that today. I'll give you another example. One of my businesses is working with an organization or a company which manufactures electronic products, and they are world leaders. Now, when we opened after lockdown, all of a sudden our service centers started getting calls, flurry of calls, asking for help in terms of uh, installations or service issues with their products. We started addressing them, but then we saw that customers have started, getting uneasy, getting restless, that it's been 48 hours, our calls have not been attended, it's been 72 hours. Hey, look, understand, the person who is going to come and attend your service call is not a robot. He is also a human being. He also needs to bear or break the challenges. His family may not be allowing him to, get out of the house, because money is not the primary thing. Money is secondary. Jaan hai to jahan hai. If where there is life, there is wealth. So who's at fault? We people are at fault. We need to understand, we are in an internal environment which is being affected by the external environment today. The pandemic is not a country specific grown, or if let's say it didn't brew in India. It has come from outside. It's been accepted by everybody, by the media, by the global leaders, by our leaders, by the people, that the academicians, the researchers, that it's come from outside. So we have to beat it. That means there's an external factor which is influencing the internal factor. So when I talk of the role of private entrepreneurs, I also talk of, when I say internal aspects, I also talk of role of government, role of private entrepreneurs, role of suppliers, role of employees, role of customers. Now, let me ask you all, most of you are working with an institution of repute. Your classes are not running, the students are not coming into the campus. The management is still trying to make sure that most of you are able to be with them. Most of you are able to sustain. This becomes a very good example of having to create a self-sustaining business. Now, self-sustaining business cannot be made on its own. Like I said, it requires role of government. Physical measures have to be brought in. Large industries who've got reserves and are surviving, they need to take care of smaller industries. The micro, small and medium enterprises who are struggling need to be handheld. So there is an effort from the government, not only Indian government, be it any government. Apart from that, there should be an effort from suppliers. Now, if I am your supplier, let's say for computers, or let's say for a technology, and if I know that you are in trouble and if I can handhold you, that is what is called partnership. That is what is called relationship. So we need to build our relationships with our suppliers and our principals. This is another very, very important aspect. Third aspect, as employees, what are we doing? We are just bad mouthing about our company. Oh, we were laid off, or the company is giving us only half a salary, or the company says don't work, work without salary for a month. What is wrong in that? Instead of you sitting 1 month at home, if you can give that 1 month to a company which has given you bread and butter for years, and help the company to come out of a crisis, a financial crisis, I don't think that is wrong. I think that is something that all employees should get together. It should be the psychology that we need to support each other. That is why when you see most of the ads that run through the countries globally, they show one very common thing, which is hand holding. So when you hand hold, that is when you walk together, you work together, you win together. And I've always told in all my seminars, all my classrooms, that if the company grows or if the organization grows, you will grow. Believe in that. You help the organization grow, definitely the organization will help you grow. So these are very, very important aspects. More important aspects that I see here are another thing that I've seen. Businesses are running away. I don't think businesses should run away. Businesses should have, today you say I am a CEO from the IIM, I am a CEO from Harvard, I am a CEO from LBS, I am a CEO from ISB. If you have such degrees, if you've got so much of experience, then help your organization come out of these challenges, get them back into green. You have not, according to me, you have not gone into red. According to me, you've gone into a stage which is called orange stage. So from orange stage, it is your choice to take your organization into red, or it is your choice to bring your organization into green. Come out with methods. Cost reduction methods are there. There are so many things can be done. Take views of your employees. So these are the kind of things which will help businesses proceed. I was hearing one of your key speakers. He made very valid points, and one among them was that maybe one size does not fit all. I have a different opinion. When in crisis, you have to have, one size may not fit all, but one size should be something which has adjust all. So you have to adjust, you have to make your amendments. When we drive a car, we make adjustments, we reduce our speed, we increase the speed, we get into idle. Why not imply the same thing into a business scenario? What is different? Nothing is different. You take any scenario today globally is same. The sufferings are the same. The situations are the same. In fact, I want to go ahead and, say that start making similar laws across the world. Start getting into uniform laws, get into consultations. Top leaders should get into global consensus. You should do consultations. We've got so many organizations like Niti Aayog or United Nations. We have to get a uniform kind of a law system across the world. We have now built communication. It's a uniform communication. So when we can build uniform communication, why can't we build uniform laws? Though it makes it, you can't have 100%, 70%, 75%. Some aspect is left for customization. That's why I said one size adjusts all. It may not fit all. I want to take you back to Palau. Now, Palau has been holding its guards up for the last 4 or 5 months. We don't have a single case of COVID. It's not that we have not allowed people to come in. We have called back our citizens who were stuck in various countries. Flights have been chartered to bring them in. We've taken care of them. They have been put in quarantine. We have followed the norms of United Nations. We followed the norms of WHO. Palau themselves have been following their own norms. Even then, no cases. So what does all this imply? That Palau's main economy is tourism. We built our economy in such a way that we were self-sustaining. Though our dependency is there, but what about basic things? Our fuel has to be imported. We've had energy crisis. We have got, our water needs to be, brought from outside. Machineries have to be brought from outside. Food stuff, major food stuff has to be brought from. So just imagine when you're an island, your situation is worse than a landlocked country. In a landlocked country, you can reach out to your neighbor and get stuff in. But on an island in the middle of a Pacific Ocean, what do you do? So we need to somewhere take the Palau model and see that how are they sustaining themselves. Now we are talking of a bubble. So the bubble is that we open out to a particular country, or we open out to two particular countries to start our revenue generation. So these are things that, world leaders across the countries have to consider, have to take into very deep thought. One major shift that I'm now seeing in business is there are three things. I would like to say that according to me, there are three verticals which are now going to be very important. One is there has to be investment on technology, because if technology was not there, we would not be able to communicate, we would not be able to reach out. So technology has shown that it plays a very, very important role. We need to enhance our global spending on technology. The second area that I feel that is going to become critical is agriculture. All countries now need to start becoming self-sustaining in agriculture, because this lockdown across the globe has taught us aircrafts are all grounded, ships are all grounded, only need-based is getting up and going. What happens when you've got a country of 1 billion people you have to feed? Today, India is at 1 billion. China is there. We are expecting in another 5 years, 2 more countries or 3 more countries or next 7 years reach that stage. So what is the plan that we have for them? So when you've got technology, and off late now, people say, yeah, globally it is being known that agriculture is starting to become technology dependent. I think countries which are not into agriculture should start looking at technology dependence, or should start looking at technology to enhance their output. I'll give you a very good example of ISA, International Solar Alliance. It's an initiative of Government of India and Government of France, wherein these two countries got together and said, look, in order to overcome the dependency on our natural resources like coal, petroleum for energy, why not we look at solar? India was already moving ahead in solar, but when Prime Minister Modi and the French President got together and came up with this idea, the first stage was that all the countries along the equator would be the members, which means what, the countries which were not having access to solar energy or proper energy across the equator started looking at it seriously. In the stage two, what has happened now, they have opened out, the International Solar Alliance has opened out to countries who are even away from the equator. Why? Because we have felt that we need everybody to have equal opportunity, everybody to have human life is important everywhere, be it India, be it in the US, be it in Kazakhstan, be it in China, or be it in Palau or any other country, or even Antarctica. Human life is human life. So why deprive a human life of a basic necessity? So today, many countries have started looking at solar as their key form of energy. So what does that mean? Self-sustainability. So when we can look at solar as a key form of energy and share it with others, why not have agriculture like that? Today, there are close to 35 countries, even today, which are not having agriculture as their mainstay. It may be more. You look at the desert region. Do they have any agriculture? Can they grow anything? But now what they're doing, they are trying to identify products or technologies which can grow without sand, which can grow without water, which can grow in a controlled environment. So these are the kind of technologies we have to share in agriculture. Third important aspect or third important area that I'm seeing is going to have potential is health. This pandemic has exposed the health infrastructure of almost all the countries. If you see, America claim that they have one of the best systems of agriculture, it was also put through stress test. So I feel that there has to be a lot of pressure or a lot of inertia to be put on health. So these are the three areas that I feel require a huge boost. Of course, industry and maybe airline, hospitality, all that will follow if you have these three in place. Without agriculture, can you think of hospitality industry? You cannot. Without agriculture, can you think of hotels running when there is no food? Where is it going to run? In fact, I have been dead against hotels having buffet system. There is so much of pressure on the nation's output, nation's agriculture output. There is so much of food wastage. I very strongly believe we should eat only how much we want to eat. Why waste it? And then what do? End of it, many people come up with theories. No, we don't waste it. We give it to the poor. You are giving it to the poor because it is left over for you. Would you have taken the initiative to make food for the poor if this was not left over? You would have not done that. So these things are very important. Another small aspect or maybe a challenging aspect that I see is increase in the supply chain or logistics. Today, it is proven again, finally, that goods travel has taken over human travel. If you see 6 weeks ago, humans were not traveling as much as goods were traveling. So what does that show? There is a intense pressure to have goods traveling more than having humans traveling. So these are again areas of you can say opportunities also. In fact, you should see this movie called Wall-E, where the Earth's ecosystem is destroyed. In fact, this pandemic gave me a lot of time wherein I saw a lot of web series, a lot of movies. So I'm just sharing that with you. Of course, Congeniality and all that is something that everybody would have seen, but these are very few movies. There's another one called The Legend, in which Will Smith is a very famous Hollywood actor. He's left all alone in the world. You should see these movies, and these movies should become like case studies for us that look, this is where we can reach. If somebody has thought of making this movie and has made this movie, there must be some reason. He must have visualized something. So these are the areas that I feel that we need to really focus on, and getting these areas up and running is not a challenge because we already have sufficient pool, sufficient expertise. I also feel that it is time that institutions like yours or management schools or management students should also come up with case studies, should come up with, recovery strategies for a country. In fact, we are very open. If at all you want to, I was being told that you have an incubation center. Your management students are, if they want to do a study on Republic of Palau, there's a lot of information available on the net and you can do it. So to sum up, business is the opportunities or envisaging business in the future. We feel that, I feel that we have to rise. We have to use our knowledge, we have to use our experience. Now, I'll quickly run through, I hope I'm having enough of time. If there's anything, okay, I'll quickly run through the education system. This is something of a lot of interest, and this is something that is creating a lot of noise. Education system today is primary education, according to me, and higher education. We will not touch primary education. We will talk of higher education. We need to look at a global scenario where there are possibilities that the campuses are now going to shrink. We are going to have a very different approach. In fact, it's high time that educationists and government both start looking at a very changed approach. The government needs to come up with better guidelines, with simpler guidelines. Now, when I say government, it's not necessarily Indian government. I'm talking about governments across the world. We need to have norms which are easily and simple to comply with. For example, today medicine is taking 5 years and then another 3 years. I think seeing the situation, seeing the number of frontline health workers that we have lost, we need to come up with an education system which is, speeding up. We need to replace these doctors. We need to replace these frontline health workers. We still cannot wait. Oh, we have to wait for another 5 years for next set of doctors to come. Oh, my college can give me only a limited 150 seats. Why limit education? I don't understand that. Today, in India, there are lakhs of children who write NEET, who write entrance exams for medical education, but the seats are only 15 or 20%. Why are we not addressing these gaps? Why are we making a medical education only in reach of the rich? Why does the poor have to take a loan to teach his child? Why can't it be affordable? Between a management education, management is also a science. Why can't we have systems? Why can't we have now courses which are job oriented? Those, according to me, those days are going away, where you've got 3-year degree programs, 4-year degree programs. I think it is very, very important to come out with certification or skill programs which are career based and job oriented. 1 year, pack your 2 years into that 1 year, give it to the student, let him get out, let him start earning bread and butter. Your dependency on government will reduce. Even today, for health, we depend on government, for education, we depend on government, for subsidy, we depend on government. Why? So that means we need to recreate, we need to realign our strategy, our policy in terms of education. I will not want to touch the new education policy 2020, but I am generally talking worldwide that this is the time where the academia, the institution, the government all have to sit together and derive a new education architecture. You need to come up with courses which does not consume time. You need to concise your infrastructure. You need to bring in less pressure on your own financial pockets, because according to me, and you need to think out of the box, because the key word in education is innovate or perish. I mean, in management schools, we have been taught that you have to either innovate or you perish. So what kind of innovation are you going to do? So you bring in a new infrastructure with a smart class kind of a thing or a smart board? No, that is only a partial innovation. The key innovation is going to be your approach and your strategy towards your course or towards the student. Look, the student or the person who is sitting, let's say as an IPS officer or a person like me who's sitting as a counsel general, we have learned and we are using this knowledge. So what is gone in is what we have processed. So who puts that in? It's the government, it's the institution, it's the faculty, it's the academia that puts it into a student. We are like children. What we feed, what the parents feed us, we will digest that. So we need to take a call. institutions need to come forward. There has to be a think tank, and it has to be very dynamic. We cannot sit on a particular policy or a particular strategy for years. We need to do an annual or a biannual renewal, or we need to do an updation. We need to make changes that if this is not working, we need to move to plan B. But it is now time that we need to do. This hub and spoke model is now finishing, according to me. So, you know, with this, this last 2 minutes that I will take is that a very, very important factor or a binder between business and education is leadership. Leadership is something that the world requires. I'm not talking of political leaders. I'm talking of leaders in every sphere. Today, I differentiate between a leader and an outstanding leader. Anybody can be brought in, given a position and said, hey, you are a leader. But when that organization or that concept or that business or that strategy succeeds, that succeeds through a wise leader, that is when it is called outstanding leader. That is the differentiation. I was taught when we used to play cricket in our college days, we had, in fact, you've got one of the speakers who is also been the student of the same guru that I have been trained under, Mr. Bidu. He used to say there is a difference between a cricketer and an outstanding cricketer. A cricketer is a person who plays, but who is an outstanding cricketer? An outstanding cricketer is the one who achieves for his nation, achieves for his team. That is where the difference is. So having a good leadership is very, very, very important, especially in this time of pandemic. It's like having a good captain of a ship that he takes you out of rough weather. You can bring in a sailor boy and say, okay, you are the captain, but will he be able to bring you out of the rough weather? I don't think so. It's only a wise leader, a mentored leader, which will be able to take you out of the rough. So with this, I think I've spoken enough, and I want to leave the platform for the other experienced and valuable speakers. If there is any question that I can answer, I will be glad to answer. And once again, I'm very, very thankful to Dr. Sam and yourself and the entire team, the chairman, Madam Geeta Nagpal, for creating this platform, because when you speak, you get ideas. When you speak, you get solutions. So thank you for making us speak. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much. It was such an exciting talk, Dr. Sharma. It was so mesmerizing to hear you. You touched upon every aspect of the business and the education system. You started off with saying that a lot of entrepreneurs say that it is a God's act. However, you also, made the point that today we need to take the responsibility or accountability on oneself, take the onus of the situation, just not blame the institution or the government organizations. So I would like to congratulate you for being the helm of Palau, the island that you come from, for having it declared as a non-COVID affected area. It's real. I can understand what it takes to be, in a place like that, and to be, COVID free, wherein the entire globe today is affected with this pandemic. So you initially, in fact, declared your conversation into two parts, business and education. So I would have a couple of questions asked. I have several questions received. We'll just focus on some important questions to you. And you spoke about business as an entrepreneur. You spoke the mind of entrepreneur today. So I just have a question. What are the three important essential factors an entrepreneur has to focus to sail through this unprecedented times?
Okay. I think the factors are plenty, but then I would, you've made it easier for me by saying three.
Right.
First, very important aspect is, your knowledge. Knowledge, if you don't have knowledge about operating a machine, you will never know how to repair it. Because only when you operate a machine, you know how to repair it. The second most important aspect is experience. Your experience comes only with the hardships that you go through. Right. Sitting in air-conditioned rooms will not give you the experience. Definitely not. It's proven. The richest people today in the world, you take it Jack Ma, or you take Dhirubhai Ambani, or you take any example, they have walked on the streets and then reached air-conditioned rooms. They are not born in air-conditioned rooms. They're not, in other words, they're not born with golden spoon. Sure. And the third most important aspect is continuous learning. The attitude of I know it all is going to sink you. Keep learning, keep listening. Today, when I am listening to you, I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to pick the good points. I mean, nobody is big or small. I have been listening to the webinar since 10:45. It was very easy for me to say that, okay, my turn is at 12:30. I will come and sit and go. So these are the three key attributes of anybody who wants to bail out a sinking ship. If you don't know the mechanism of your ship, if you don't have the experience of running the ship, and if you don't want to listen to what your team members are saying, you will never be able to bail yourself out. So these are the three important aspects.
Lovely. This pandemic has given all of us time to reflect on ourselves and explore various options for us. And now coming to another important point, you coming from a place which is known for its tourism, and one of the industries which is badly hit is tourism in the current pandemic. So what are the steps that you plan to take to come out of this situation and start things normally?
See, like I was saying in my during my thoughts session, when your supply exceeds your demand, that is where the problem or the challenges happen. In the case of our country, the advantage was that the supply and demand were kept in a balance. So the government knew they brought in a SWAT team to actually take care of the situation, and we have sustained ourselves. It is natural that no government, no country, no business, no person can be confined forever. We were only going to go insane doing that. So same way, even Palau is now slowly looking at opening out. We are very, very thoughtful. We are taking baby steps again. We are trying to understand that, if we are creating a travel bubble, what is the impact it can have on our economy, adverse impact and positive impact. So we are analyzing that. It's very, very, very important to analyze what you do. It's very easy for us to open our airport and have 5-10 flights coming in a day with tourists, but we are not doing that. Most importantly, the people are with us. When the people are with the government, the nation succeeds. So this is what we are doing. We are taking opinions of experts in terms of infrastructure that is required, because when you start getting tourists in, there is going to be a pressure on your natural resources, there's going to be pressure on your food industry, there's going to be a pressure on energy. How are we equipped to take over that? So when, like I said, people are with us, they are willing to wait, and it's making our job much easier.
Certainly, as we say, when the going gets tough, the tough gets going. Right. So I would have one last question asked under education system. You definitely pointed out on three important aspects that a country need to focus on. One is invest on technology. The other one is to focus on, enhancing the agriculture sector and the healthcare. So you also made a point about education industry is going to shrink the uh, the employment. So would you elaborate a bit and also point out on what aspects should the students and the faculties or the academicians in total need to focus on this pandemic or post-pandemic?
Okay, I think I made a point that post-pandemic, the education infrastructure is going to shrink, the physical infrastructure, because when you've got a dependency on technology. By the way, the good news is that your state government may be wanting to start offline classes by October, so that should bring smiles on your face and the face of your management. But
Okay.
coming back to the point, it's very important that you focus on very key areas which need to be addressed in terms of skilling people now. The skilling mindset has to now change. We cannot, for example, these are my views that according to me, we don't need to produce more drivers today. There was a time where even the government of India had made a statement, I think 2 years ago or 3 years ago, wherein they said we have produced jobs in terms of, I think, maybe 100,000 or 200,000 by providing cars for hire, the taxis. So I don't think we need to focus more on doing that. So what does that mean? That driving schools may reduce. So it's very important that now the institutions, each institution needs to create a separate committee, a think tank which says that, look, this is the potential or this is the type of course that we see is going to be in demand in the next 6 months. And first equip yourself to offer that course. So that can be done with the existing faculty. On the other side, there is a sense of urgency in the mind of the student and the parent, more so on the student, that how soon can I get out and start earning money. So this has to be matched with the skilling set that you have to provide to. So this onus now lies, again I said, dependency on government, of course, because government is the godfather, but the onus lies on the institutions themselves. So that is where the mantra of Atmanirbharta comes in, that you decide for yourself what you want to do. Swayamta, what you want, what you can do yourself, do it with your own hand. So this is something that you all need to sit. When I say you, the education fraternity needs to start thinking and doing.
Basically, it's time to unlearn and relearn from all the aspects.
True.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Neeraj J. Sharma, for joining us today and investing your valuable time and enlightening our students from all the aspects of business and education. It was real pleasure to have you today as one of the eminent speakers. So thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much for having me. See you again. Bye-bye.
Thank you.